Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Cinnabar Blazers going up against the Kitakami Rogues as the Blazers are sitting one spot out of Victory Road and the Kitakami Rogues are just trying to keep their season alive, and they did everything they had to last round with a clean sweep, whereas the Blazers unfortunately are coming off a loss, but a lot riding on this game with only one round left after this. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Fire decks? Will it be the Darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And having flipped heads going first, it is going to be that Rocket's Pursuit deck. Now they've only got the Meowth in hand, so that goes in the active spot. It is the Growlithe for the Cinnabar Blazers, but they've also got that Vulpix that does go onto the bench as they're looking to be chasing that Meowth around the board. But as we said, the Rogues did flip heads, and the reason they have Meowth was because they weren't able to fill out a full team of Darkness types. As it is the Arbok being pulled, they do play the Professor's Research. They get the Ekans, they get a second Persian in hand as well. They've also got the Weezing and the Koga. As they put that Ekans onto the bench, they send it over to the Cinnabar Blazers, who pull the Ninetales, which is fantastic for that Vulpix. They've also got the Pokeball that they are now playing. They've got that Blaine in hand. They need to be careful of using that thinking it's a Professor's Research by mistake, but they are starting to set up that Vulpix nice and early, knowing that that Ninetales can do a lot of damage. As they think about what they want to do, they do send it back over to the Kitakami Rogues, who desperately need this win because they are further down the leaderboard. They have just pulled the Giovanni. Now they could evolve this Meowth, but it still needs 2 energy for the Persian to do damage, so they could just go on the offensive with Meowth, doing 10 damage with this Payday, but it will also allow them to draw a card from their deck. And that is exactly what they're going to do, and they do pull another Arbok here as that goes back over to the Cinnabar Blazers. They pull the Rapidash from the Genetic Apex. They've also got the Mythical Island variant in this deck. As Ninetales is now online, they're going to start putting energy onto the Growlithe here in that active spot, and they are again thinking about what they want to do. They could use that potion, but it would only restore 10 health for Growlithe, so they send it back over to the Rogues, who can get this Persian online, and with that Shadow Claw, it can flip a coin, and if it is a heads, the Cinnabar Blazers will have to discard a random card from their hand into that discard pile. It will do 40 damage, so it's not enough to actually take the Growlithe off the field though. And they need to flip the heads, and that they are successful, and the card, it's the Rapidash going into the discard pile as the Ponyta is pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers as well, and they do get that onto the bench, but they opt to keep the Growlithe in the active spot instead of getting that Ninetales ready to go. This buys the Kitakami Rogues a little bit of time. They get a Pokeball, so they can get another basic Pokemon out of that deck, and they are going to do so, getting that second Meowth, which is great because they've got that Persian, but they still need a Coughing if they want to get that Weezing online and potentially poison the opposing Blazers, who are using that Rapid 9-9 deck. But it's the Shadow Claw from Persian to take the Growlithe out of this game, and with another coin flip, this time they do get the tails, so there will be no discarded from the Cinnabar Blazers, but that first point going to the Kitakami Rogues as the Blazers put that Ninetales into the active spot. They do pull the Professor's Research now, looking very similar to that Blaine card, as they are going to play it, getting another 2 cards. They get the Blaine, they get another Pokeball as well, which they are going to play, get another basic Pokemon. This time they get the Ponyta from the Mythical Island here, and they are going to put that immediately onto the bench. They've still got the Growlithe in hand as well, but here it is, the Flamethrower, 90 damage on to the Persian to wipe it off the board, and the Blazers get their first point as well in this best of 3 series. Now it is the Arbok going out into that active spot for the Kitakami Rogues. They've just pulled a Giovanni as well. They need to get another energy onto the Arbok to use this corner, which will prevent the Ninetales from being able to retreat. They're going to use the Giovanni as well, so they're going to get that additional 10 damage, but it's not enough to take the Ninetales off the board, and I don't think they want to retreat it with those Blaines in hand. That will produce an extra 30 damage on top of that already impressive 90 for Ninetales, which means once again they'll be able to wipe the Arbok off the board, but before that they're also going to use that potion to restore 20 health. So this will keep Ninetales from being eliminated by the Meowth, but here it is, the Blaine card, another Flamethrower. They will have to discard another Fire Energy as they do this, but there it is, Arbok is wiped off the board, and there's the second point here in Game 1 for the Cinnabar Blazers. And after being the first to gain a point were the Kitakami Rogues, they do not look in control of this match whatsoever. They've just pulled their second Weezing. They have no other basic Pokemon. They have the Persian, but that is not much that they can do here at the moment. They can put the Persian out, but it still won't be able to outlast the move from the Ninetales, so they can just try and get some damage in here. They're going to use the Giovanni. They will get that additional 10. This counts towards the leaderboard. Every point matters, and that 20 damage onto Ninetales. Ninetales will be able to run straight through this Meowth as that coffin is pulled for the Rogues thanks to that payday, but that is irrelevant now. There's the Blaine, the additional 30 damage counting towards the leaderboard. This is massive for the Cinnabar Blazers. They wipe this poor Meowth off the field with the Ninetales taking game 1, and as we always say, in this best of 3 series, even if it ends into that third game, still counts towards the leaderboard. As we are over with game 1, we're going to head into game 2 now. And it is the Blazers this time flipping heads, as they're going to be going first with that Blazing Volcano deck. They've got the Moltres and the Magmar from the Mythical Island set in hand. It is going to be that Toxic Energy deck for the Kitakami Rogues, as the Blazers are going back and forth, but they finally decide to put the Moltres in the active spot, the Magma on the bench. They've got another Blaine in hand as well. It's the Venipede in hand for the Rogues, but they've also got that Grimer. We can see the Scolipede in hand as well. Sorry, not the Scolipede, the Whirlipede. They're going to want to get the Scolipedes out of their deck as they put the Grimer into the active spot here. And here we go, it is game 2. The second Moltres immediately pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers, and they're going to use that Pokeball to either get a Charmander, which is what they do get, or otherwise it would have been that genetic Apex Magma. And they do put that Charmander straight onto the bench and sending it over to the Kitakami Rogues, who pull their second Grimer. They're going to generate their first energy, and they are going to put it onto the Grimer, so it can use that Poison Gas. Now it only does 10 damage, but it is going to leave this Moltres with that Poison status condition, so it is going to do an additional 10 every time it switches between teams. The potion being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers, this could offset that damage to Moltres, as they put their first energy onto the Magma here, who does do 80 damage with that Fire Punch, but unfortunately it also has to discard the 2 energy. Sorry, I believe I said Fire Punch, I meant Fire Blast. I'm pretty sure that's what the move is as I stare at this screen. But there it is, the Whirlipede coming online for the Kitakami Rogues. It also only requires 1 energy. Now it can do 20 damage, which is more than the Grimer, but they are going to stick with that Grimer in the active spot, chipping away here at this Moltres, who's now had its health halved. And we see the Cinnabar Blazers using the Professor's research they just pulled, continuing to thin the deck. They get a Leaf, but they get a Pokeball, so they're going to be able to get another basic Pokemon out of their deck here. It's either going to be the Magmar or the Charmander that we touched on earlier, and it is that genetic Apex Magma being pulled. Now this one only does 50 damage, but it doesn't have to discard any energy as it does that Magma Punch. But this Magma from the Mythical Island set gets that second energy, and they have the Leaf. They could retreat the Moltres, but instead they're opting to just leave it there. A second Whirlipede being pulled for the Kitakami Rogue, so they're going to put that second Venipede onto the bench, getting its first energy as well. And this Grimer just continues to chip away at the Moltres, getting another 10 damage, plus that additional 10 for the poisoning. And now it's the Charmeleon being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers. Now for it to go on the offensive, it requires 3 energy, but there is time for the Blazers to set this up because Moltres will still outlast this poisoning. And they are looking at the Magmar, potentially thinking of wanting to put it online. They're going to use the Leaf, they're going to retreat the Moltres. It will retreat for free now. It only required 1 energy, but they didn't want to sacrifice it for the Moltres. It's healed of the poisoning, and this Magma can wipe this Grimer off the board with this Fire Blast. 80 damage. They didn't worry about wanting to use, sorry, they couldn't use the Blaine though, because they'd used the Leaf. Only 1 supporter card per turn, and it is the Rogues now who have to decide, do they want to use the Venipede or the Whirlipede? They do go with the Whirlipede, who already has an energy set up on it, and they're going to get that second Whirlipede online as well as that second Grimer being put onto the bench. They still have the Purloin in hand. They have not pulled a light, sorry, they still have the Liepard in hand. They're yet to pull a Purloin, as 20 damage being done to this Magma, but it is now also going to be suffering from this poisoning as the Charizard is pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers. They are absolutely going to get more energy onto this Charmeleon. The Charizard requires 4 energy. And there's the potion though onto this Magma, buying the Blazers a bit more time to set up how they see fit. They do have a second potion in hand, but they're not going to use that right now, as that 10 additional damage from the poisoning chipping away. And there is the second Lipard pulled for the Rogues, but they're still yet to pull a Purloin. They're continuing with these poison stings onto the Magma, trying to chip away here. They're trying to take game 2 to take it into game 3 and try and get this victory. As a Professor's Research now being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers, they are going to play that immediately. And it's the second Leaf and the second Charmander being pulled. They are going to use that potion once again onto the Magma, buying them even more time as they look to set up this Charizard and get it online. But with that, they will be sending it back over to the Rogues, who are now finally going to pull the Scolipede. Now this does additional damage if the opposing Pokemon is poisoned, but we already know it is going to wipe this Magma off the board, but it won't be able to poison the opposing Pokemon. So this is an interesting choice. They potentially could have saved that for the benched Whirlipede here, but Magma is gone and the Kitakami Rogues have taken their first point, and it is going to be the Charizard coming out now for the Cinnabar Blazers. As they pull their second Charizard, it is going to get that fourth energy, and it's going to do 150 damage to this Scolipede. It will not last another turn. It has been wiped off the board, and the Cinnabar Blazers have just taken their second point. Now Charizard did have to discard 2 fire energy to do this, as the Professor's Research is pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They probably want to try and get this Charizard poison. They get a Pokeball, they get another Koga, so they haven't gotten that second Scolipede out of their deck. Using the Pokeball, they finally get a Purloin though, that they are immediately going to put onto the bench, getting its first energy. Lipard only requires 1 energy, I believe, to start doing damage, but here is the Poison Sting onto the Charizard, doing 20 damage, the additional 10 from the poisoning. Now Charizard cannot take this Whirlipede out of the game yet, as there's that second Charmeleon being pulled, another energy being put onto the Charizard. Now the Kitakami Rogues need to pull the Scolipede. There's not much the Blazers can do unless they want to retreat the Charizard and prevent it from having additional damage. They do have the Leaf, they're going to do it, so they're going to save the Charizard. This is a very smart play. Now having 0 retreat cost, they can put any Pokemon into that active spot. They're going to go with the Moltres. It looks like they're trying to bait the Kitakami Rogues to take the Moltres out, because if they do, this Charizard can immediately come back in. It's the Muck though being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. And they need to think about how they want to address this. Muck can do 70 damage with 3 energy on it, but it cannot outlast the Charizard there. Kind of stuck here are the Kitakami Rogues. They are going to use the X-Speed. They're going to retreat the Whirlipede. It makes that retreat cost 1 less, so they use the 1 energy that's on it. They're going to use the Muck. Now this Muck will maximize the damage that they can do. It does 70 to take out this Moltres. Whirlipede could have done it, but again, maximizing that damage. However, the Cinnabar Blazers are free to put this Charizard back into the active spot. It only requires 1 more energy, and we've already seen it. It does 150 damage. This Muck cannot last this turn. The Blame cannot be used on the Charizard, so they can't do additional damage, but 150 damage to take this Muck off the board, and the Cinnabar Blazers have taken game 1 and 2 to ensure that they will win this series, and they will move back into the top 5. And if our stat count is correct, this should actually lock up the Cinnabar Blazers a spot in Victory Road. But with that, they want to try and ensure that they can have the best position possible, so they're going to be using this Basking Sun deck to try and get their 3rd victory in this series and go for the clean sweep. They put the Heatmore in the active spot with this, so landed on the bench. It's the Zubat from the Poison Pin deck for the Kitakami Rogues, going on that active spot. As the Professor's Research is pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers, they're going to use that immediately, get in another 2 cards. They get the Pokemon Flute, and they get the second Pokemon Flute, but they cannot put an energy down on this first turn. It doesn't generate in the energy zone, so they send it over to the Rogues, who pull the Nidoking. They're going to use the Pokeball. They get a Nidorino female. They've also got their own Professor's Research in hand. They've got that Golbat already as well, but the Professor's Research gets them the Nidorino, gets them a second Zubat here. They put the Nidorino female down, knowing they've got that Nidorina in hand, but they're not going to worry about that second Zubat for the time being. The first Zubat in the active spot doing that glide, doing 10 damage here to the Heatmore. who only requires 1 energy to start doing 30 damage. It's the Larvesta being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers. They've got the Volcarona in hand too. But here it is, the Heatmore going with that combustion, 30 damage already onto this Zubat. Fortunately for the Rogues, they're going to be able to put down the Golbat as they pull a second Nidorina, which they immediately use to evolve the Nidoran female. But here it is, Golbat is online, and fortunately for them, it's already got 1 energy, so they can get an energy onto the Nidorina, as well as they place down that second Zubat, the wing attack doing 40 damage to the Heatmore here. And they do put it into elimination range. As the Blazers pull their second Salazzle, they're going to start, pull their first Salazzle. They've got the Volcarona at the back of their hand, but that Salazzle does require 2 energy, so it won't be able to get on the offensive yet. However, they use the potion to restore the health of the Heatmore, ensuring that it can't be eliminated, and then they use the Giovanni, ensuring it has enough power to take out this Golbat with that additional 10 damage, and the Blazers take the first point here in Game 3. And they are controlling the early stages of this game. Once again, they have been able to dominate the Kitakami Rogues since they were able to set up that Charizard, they were able to set up the Ninetales. It's a Nidoran female once again being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues here. And they are going to put an energy down, knowing they've got that Nidorina in hand, as the Nidorina in the active spot goes for the bite, but it only does 30 damage, not enough to take out the Heatmore either. As the Blazers pull the X speed, they're going to get their first energy onto the Larvesta, who they finally evolve into the Volcarona. Now that does require 3 energy. They're willing to give up the combustion though, willing to give up the Heatmore. It goes for the combustion, doing the 30 damage, but this Nidorina will be able to take it out as the Nidoran male is pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They're surely going to want to set that up and try and get this Nidoking online, a second Nidorina as well being online on that bench. But here's the bite from the Nidorina, taking the Heatmore out of this match. So as this Poison Pins deck gets the first point for the Kitakami Rogues that they've had, it's a 1 point v 1 point Game 3 here. Salazzle being put into the active spot, and it's the Sabrina being pulled for the Blazers as well if they're hoping to target any benched Pokemon. But with these Fire Claws, they can take Nidorina out of this contest. So that is exactly what they're going to do and get their second point. They only require 1 more for this to be a clean sweep series. And the Rogues once again finding themselves on the back foot. They are going to put the Nidoran male into the active spot, and they're going to use the Pokeball that they just pulled. They are going to get the second Nidoran male here that they can put onto the bench, but they're more concerned with getting this Nidorino online. It does require a second energy to do 40 damage, which isn't a great deal. It won't even halve the health of the Salazzle, but they do have that Nidoking in hand, and that is the part that they are counting on. As the Blazers pull a second Larvesta, they've also got that Sabrina still in hand that they can use. And they're looking at it as they may choose to go with that going forward, but we will see. They are going to play it. The Rogues cannot send out the Zubat. That will give up the game for them. They're going to have to send out this Nidorina, who does have 80 health, so it can outlast this Salazzle. Going with the Fire Claws, it does 60 damage. Now this is the Rogues pulling out the Nidoqueen though. Now they're not going to want to use that just yet. They're going to want to retreat this Nidorina with only 1 retreat cost. They give up the energy that's on it. They get this Nidorino back online so they can get the Nidoking into that active spot. They're going to, as we see, they put the Nidoqueen online as well. Nidoking is going to wipe this Salazzle off the board, getting a second point for the Kitakami Rogues, but the Blazers have already been able to get up 2 energy onto this Volcarona, and once it gets the 3rd energy, it will be able to do 80 damage, but not just to the Nidoking. It can do 80 damage to any Pokemon on the board for the Kitakami Rogues, which leaves either that Nidoqueen with 80 health left or the Zubat with only 50 health in total. This Volcanic Ash is going to win the series for the Cinnabar Blazers and ensure, well, they've already won the series, but it ensures a clean sweep as they take the Nidoqueen out of this match. And this is a lot of momentum being built for the Cinnabar Blazers as this shoots them up into 3rd place. And sorry, they still have not locked up a spot in Victory Road, and next round to do so, they're going to have to take down the Melomel Rumbles, who have just suffered their first loss. Whereas For the Rogues, next round, they are going up against the Levere Constrictors, and they need a lot of things to fall into place to still make victory road. But with that said, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below who you thought the best card was, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.